Imagine the roar of an engine echoing through empty city streets at night. The kind of sound that rattles storefront windows and lingers in your chest long after the car has passed. Picture a silhouette framed by streetlights, long and low with a stance that seems ready to pounce even when standing still. In this world of chrome and gasoline, looks alone could win attention, but the real battle was fought when the driver pressed the accelerator and the car surged forward with unshakable authority. This was more than just transportation. It was a signal of rebellion, of freedom, of refusing to blend in when the world expected conformity. The machine in question carried not only raw power, but an identity so vivid it would leap from the asphalt to the silver screen, becoming inseparable from how generations remembered the thrill of American muscle. Stay tuned, and if you're ready to see how legends are built, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment about which icon you want to see covered next. The 1968 Dodge Charger arrived at a time when American streets were buzzing with the thunder of performance cars, and within just a few years the Charger would set itself apart as more than another entry in the horsepower wars. It was unmistakable from the moment you laid eyes on it. Those long Coke bottle curves, the full-width hidden headlights, and a stance that seemed both sleek and menacing at once. Beneath the surface, Dodge built the Charger with serious performance credibility, offering everything from small block practicality to the legendary 426 Hemi. But it wasn't only about what was under the hood. It was about creating a car that embodied the dual promise of style and speed in equal measure. That's the starting point for understanding why the Charger's arrival in 1968 would mark the beginning of its transformation into a cultural icon. Micro-story, the bold redesign. The first Charger had debuted just a couple of years earlier, but it hadn't fully captured the market. Dodge knew it needed more than just horsepower to stand out. So for 1968, they introduced a redesign that was at once more elegant and more aggressive, with fastback styling that gave the car its signature look. This was a gamble. Would buyers embrace a more refined muscle car, or would they stick with boxier competitors? The answer came quickly. Showroom traffic surged, and the 1968 model became an instant success. The new design showed that boldness paid off, and it set the stage for everything that followed. Context digest, the market around it. By 1968, nearly every American automaker was pumping out performance coupes, each one boasting louder engines and brighter graphics. It was a crowded field and differentiation mattered. For Dodge, the Charger wasn't just another muscle car. It was positioned as the brand's flagship performance coupe. That meant it carried both the burden of expectation and the opportunity to define an identity. The Charger needed to resonate not just with gearheads, but with buyers who wanted something aspirational. Micro-story. The power menu. Dodge didn't just sell a single version of the Charger. Buyers could choose engines ranging from modest small-block V8s to pavement-melting big blocks like the 440 Magnum and, for those who dared, the 426 Hemi. This variety gave the Charger an edge. It could be customized to a driver's budget and appetite for speed. The 440 quickly gained a reputation as the sweet spot for performance and reliability, while the Hemi became the stuff of legend, rare, expensive, and brutally fast. Dodge had effectively made the Charger into a performance platform adaptable to many audiences, which would help its cultural reach spread further. Reflection bridge. In creating a car that was both versatile and distinct, Dodge had unlocked something powerful. But the Charger's rise to legend wasn't going to happen on showroom floors alone. It needed a bigger stage, micro-story. The NASCAR connection. Beyond the streets, Dodge had motorsport ambitions. The Charger was adapted for NASCAR, where aerodynamics and high-speed stability could make or break careers. While the early versions struggled with lift on the high banks, engineers worked tirelessly to refine the design. That effort would eventually produce innovations like the Charger 500 and Daytona, cars that would dominate on the track. But even before those breakthroughs, the Charger's presence in racing helped cement its credibility with fans. It wasn't just a flashy street car. It was bred to compete. Context digest. Style meets substance. In an era where muscle cars were often about extremes, the Charger managed a rare balance. It looked fast, it was fast, and it carried itself with a kind of cinematic drama. The hidden headlights gave it a menacing face. The recessed taillights added flair, and the proportions were spot on for the time. Buyers weren't just purchasing performance. They were buying into an image of modern American power. This balance is why the Charger could transcend being a car and start becoming a symbol. Micro story. The moment before stardom. By late 1968, the Charger had carved out a loyal following. But the most defining chapter was just around the corner. A Hollywood director and a movie star with a love of cars were about to put the Charger on the map in a way that no marketing budget ever could. The film industry was searching for authenticity, and the Charger was about to become the perfect antagonist on screen. Reflection Bridge, success in the market was one thing, but the Charger was about to discover that its true immortality would come when cameras started rolling and audiences leaned forward in their seats. Context, digest. Why Hollywood mattered. The late 1960s was a golden age of car chases on film, and moviegoers craved realism and intensity. The Charger, with its intimidating looks and thunderous soundtrack, fit the bill perfectly. It was the kind of car that didn't need a script to tell its story. The design did all the talking. This was the environment in which the Charger would become not just a sales success, but a cinematic legend. And so, with its design sharpened, its engines roaring, and its reputation growing, the Dodge Charger 1968 was poised to leap from Detroit streets to the global stage, straight into the heart of Hollywood. The 1968 Dodge Charger stepped into the Hollywood spotlight at precisely the right moment, and its role on the silver screen would elevate the car from admired machine to cultural phenomenon. It wasn't enough that the Charger looked menacing or had the muscle to back it up. What mattered was how those qualities translated on film. When the black Charger roared into view in a now legendary chase sequence, it embodied danger, mystery, and raw American power. Suddenly, the Charger was no longer just a car. It was a character, and audiences worldwide couldn't forget it. Micro story. The chase that changed cinema. The Charger's unforgettable appearance in a late 60s car chase scene set a new bar for realism. The director insisted on real cars, real streets, and real danger, and the Charger delivered everything in spades. Its long body leaned into corners with drama, its tires screamed against asphalt, and its engine note reverberated like a war drum. The duel between predator and prey wasn't just about actors, it was about machines locked in combat. The Charger's on-screen dominance made it the perfect villain, and moviegoers left theaters buzzing about the car as much as the star. Context, digest. The power of image. In a time before social media, a film could make or break a car's reputation. The Charger gained instant notoriety as the menacing foil, an image Dodge could never have manufactured through advertising alone. Hollywood had given it an aura of danger and allure, and suddenly, the Charger wasn't just a purchase, it was a fantasy. This was a moment when product placement and cultural timing merged seamlessly, and it worked beyond expectation. Micro story. A TV star emerges. The Charger's fame didn't end with one film. It found new life on television, where a brightly painted version leaped rivers, tore across dirt roads, and outran every pursuer week after week. Viewers tuned in for the wild stunts, but the car became the real star. That series created a new generation of Charger fans who associated the car with mischief, freedom, and defiance. From big screen villain to small screen hero, the Charger proved it could embody multiple identities without losing its mystique. Reflection Bridge, with every screen appearance. The Charger became more than transportation. It became shorthand for rebellion, speed, and cinematic cool. But the cultural explosion begged a deeper question. What made the Charger's design and personality so perfectly suited for stardom? Micro story, built like a character. The Charger's Coke bottle curves, hidden headlights, and broad rear haunches gave it a personality as distinct as any actor's. Where rivals looked flashy or cartoonish, the Charger carried a kind of menace that cameras loved. It had presence, it didn't need motion to command attention. This quality allowed filmmakers to frame it like a shadowy figure in a crime thriller or a larger-than-life hero in an action sequence. Few cars could play such varied roles so convincingly, which is why the Charger kept getting called back to the spotlight. Context digest. Fans beyond film. As its on-screen roles multiplied, the Charger's reputation seeped into car culture. Enthusiasts hunted for 68 models, restorers poured effort into bringing them back to life, and kids covered their walls with posters. Even people who didn't know horsepower from torque recognized the car instantly. The Charger had crossed a threshold. It was no longer a car you owned. It was a car you idolized. Micro-story, the collector's chase. By the 1980s and 1990s, nostalgia had begun to push values upward. Enthusiasts who grew up watching the Charger on screen now had the income to chase their childhood dream. Restorers scoured junkyards, while auction houses started reporting record prices. This hunger wasn't just about owning a muscle car. It was about possessing a piece of cinematic history. A Charger wasn't just a vehicle. It was a ticket to relive the thrill of Hollywood in your own garage. Reflection bridge. The Charger's legend was now untouchable, but the story wasn't finished. What mattered next was how the legacy of the 1968 Dodge Charger continued to echo into the modern era, shaping not only collector culture, but the very idea of what it meant to be an American icon. Context Digest, a blueprint for cool. The Charger had become a measuring stick. When new generations of performance cars emerged, people compared them to the image the '68 model had cemented: long, lean, and unapologetically aggressive. Its cinematic past became part of its DNA, and every re-release or modern interpretation carried the weight of that history. This continuity proved that the Charger was more than nostalgia. It was an enduring archetype. And so the 1968 Dodge Charger, born from Detroit steel and Hollywood smoke, had shifted from showroom star to cultural icon, and the impact of that journey would only grow stronger in the decades that followed. The 1968 Dodge Charger had already conquered the silver screen, but its story didn't stop there. It evolved into a long-lasting legacy that continues to ripple through American culture. By the time the Charger entered the new millennium, enthusiasts and collectors weren't just talking about the car's horsepower, they were talking about its meaning. The Charger represented freedom, rebellion, and style in a way that few machines ever could. When people looked back at the '68 model, they saw not only a muscle car, but a symbol of an era that valued individuality and raw power. Micro-story, the auction block fever. In the early 2000s, a genuine 1968 Charger that had appeared on film could command astronomical prices. Collectors saw these cars as more than metal. They were artifacts of popular culture. As each auction headline broke records, it confirmed that the Charger had graduated from transportation to art. The frenzy wasn't just about owning horsepower, it was about owning a slice of American mythology. Context Digest, pop culture, carryover. Even decades after its debut, the Charger kept finding new fans through blockbuster franchises. The car's on-screen presence gave it another surge of popularity, this time among younger audiences who hadn't even been alive when the original films and shows aired. The Charger had become multi-generational, a rare machine that could unite grandparents and grandchildren in admiration. It wasn't just living in the past, it was still shaping the present. Micro-story, the enthusiast's burden. For those who dreamt of owning a 1968 Charger, the reality could be both exhilarating and daunting. Parts became harder to find, restoration costs soared, and authenticity mattered more than ever. Yet enthusiasts poured time and money into keeping these cars alive. The challenge was part of the allure. Restoring a Charger wasn't just about fixing a car, it was about preserving a legend for future generations. Reflection bridge. The very difficulty of maintaining a Charger only deepened its mystique. The harder it was to preserve, the more valuable its story became. But the legacy wasn't only about scarcity, it was about influence, micro-story. Design echoes. Even modern muscle cars owe something to the 1968 Dodge Charger. Designers often cite its proportions, its aggression, and its balance of elegance and menace as benchmarks. Its hidden headlights and muscular haunches became visual cues that echoed across decades of automotive design. The Charger wasn't just remembered, it was studied, copied, and reinterpreted again and again. Context Digest. Beyond cars. The Charger's legacy spilled into fashion, music, and lifestyle. Its silhouette appeared on t-shirts, posters, and album covers. Rappers, rock stars, and influencers borrowed its image to channel rebellion and strength. Few vehicles, if any, could claim that kind of cultural footprint. The 1968 Charger had become shorthand for American cool. Just the mention of it conjured smoke-filled burnouts. Freedom on open roads and cinematic drama, micro-story, a global icon. Surprisingly, the Charger's influence wasn't confined to America. International audiences who grew up watching it on imported films and television embraced it as the ultimate symbol of muscle car mystique. In countries where owning one was nearly impossible, posters and models filled the gap. This global resonance ensured that the Charger's story transcended borders, proving that the icon was universal. Reflection bridge. By the time enthusiasts looked back from the present day, the 1968 Dodge Charger had become more than a car, more than a collectible, and more than a movie prop. It had become a lasting symbol of an attitude, a spirit, a way of life. Context digest. The meaning of legacy. A true automotive icon is one that outlives its production run and continues to inspire. The Charger did this not by chance, but because it combined performance, design, and storytelling in a way that no competitor quite matched. That formula carried the car into history books and into the hearts of millions. The journey of the 1968 Dodge Charger, from showroom curiosity to global legend, reminds us how machines can transcend their mechanical origins. What began as a bold redesign turned into a career on the world's biggest stage, and from there into immortality. The Charger had proven that a car could be more than transportation. It could be timeless. The 1968 Dodge Charger has remained a touchstone in American car culture because it embodies more than just raw horsepower. It symbolizes a moment when design, performance, and storytelling collided perfectly. From the very first glance, the Charger's long, sweeping lines and hidden headlights set it apart, and the roar of its big block engines gave it the kind of authority that enthusiasts still talk about today. Mentioning the Charger today immediately sparks images of tire smoke, dramatic camera angles, and a presence that refuses to fade with time. For US viewers, the ownership reality of a 1968 Charger is both alluring and challenging. On one hand, it represents one of the most iconic investments you can make in a muscle car, with values that have climbed steadily thanks to both scarcity and pop culture reverence. On the other hand, these cars demand patience, resources, and a willingness to embrace imperfection. Restoration costs are steep. Parts can require months of searching, and authenticity becomes a make-or-break factor for serious collectors. Yet that very difficulty enhances the aura. Owning one is proof that you've secured a living piece of history. From a market angle, the 1968 Dodge Charger continues to outperform expectations. Its appeal isn't just limited to aging enthusiasts chasing nostalgia. Younger buyers exposed to the car through films and television keep demand strong. Auction houses report fierce bidding wars, and restomods, modernized Chargers built on the 1968 shell, have become their own thriving niche. The car has effectively created its own ecosystem, where original survivors, film-used examples, and custom builds all command admiration. But the true takeaway isn't just about price or scarcity. It's about legacy. The 1968 Dodge Charger laid down a blueprint for how a car can transcend its mechanical origins. It showed that design could be cinematic, that performance could inspire legends, and that the right machine at the right moment could redefine what cool meant for generations. Few cars have managed to balance menace and elegance the way the Charger has, and even fewer have maintained cultural relevance across decades of shifting tastes. So when we talk about the 1968 Dodge Charger, we aren't just remembering a car, we're recognizing an icon that will never fade. A story that began on Detroit's assembly lines but found its immortality under Hollywood's spotlight. The final word is simple. The Charger isn't just a classic muscle car. It is America's enduring symbol of rebellion, freedom, and unstoppable style.